Okay.
Good evening, all of you. Before we begin this webinar, we have some ground rules and some information related to accessibility. All the speakers are requested to speak a bit slowly for the benefit of sign language interpretation, translation, and for the benefit of clear closed captioning services. Once we have 3 speakers today, once all the presentations are done, there will be a question answer session. You can raise your hand using the raise hand option. We will call your name so that you can ask your question, or you can put it in the chat box. We request you not to use the chat option, not to chat in between. Use the chat option because it interferes with the voice output for some of us who are using screen readers. So during presentations, during any question answer or discussion, please do not use the chat. But you can use the chat in between presentation. So we will, or if you need any support specifically, you can ask for that, you can use that. As far as the accessibility services today, we have 4 sign language interpreters. You can pin them if you need the services, if you want them to be on the screen. We have translations in Hindi, Spanish, and French. So that's for the day. With those few ground rules, we welcome you all for this 7th webinar by IFRA and IDF. The aim of these series of webinars have been to influence the global perspective on CBR. So far, the team through the various webinars have touched upon diverse topics that influences policymakers and that could lead to full and effective participation of all persons with disabilities in the community in which they live. As a part of this journey, IFRA is now digging deep into the marginalization experienced by specific groups of persons with disabilities who experience high restriction in participation and who require high support.
Thanks.
The objective being to highlight the support services that is required, the service gaps that exist in the community, and the best practices so far in resource-limited settings, so that all persons with disabilities can participate equally in the community. Today, we delve into details to understand the ground realities in ensuring services for people with autism. We have 3 speakers today who will enrich our knowledge with their experience in facilitating and delivering services required by autistic people. We are pleased that we have as many as 102 registration, and we hope that all of them will be able to join from 26 countries for this webinar. We thank the speakers in advance for their availability and willingness to share their experience and expertise with us. Before we move further, I request all of you to turn on your cameras so that we can take a group photo before we begin the event, get into the sessions. As part of the ground rule, those who are not speaking, please mute yourself. Suja, over to you.
Thanks, Meenakshi. Yeah, please continue to stay online. Just one more. Okay, I'm done. Thank you.
Thanks, Suja. Now I request
you.
Venki to give the welcome address. You have 10 minutes, Venki.
Thanks very much. Greetings of the day. And I think it's not too late to say a Happy New Year to all of you. A warm welcome and a huge thanks to all of you for being with us today. For those of you who have been with us in our previous webinars would know that we showcase examples of good practice in interventions for persons with disabilities in resource-scarce communities. However, this webinar will showcase examples of good practice with people with autism across the spectrum. The reason is that even the meager services that reach people with other disabilities do not include persons with autism, even in towns and cities. Here are some facts about autism. Autism is the most common condition in the group of development disorders known as the autism spectrum. The characteristics of the autism spectrum is in a range of mild learning and social disability to severe impairment with complex problems and highly unpredictable, unusual behavior. The thinking and learning abilities vary from gifted to average and to severely challenged. Some do well in supportive environment, while others might not. Autism may occur alone or with accompanying conditions such as intellectual disability and seizure. No two children with autism will have identical characteristics. Children with autism face challenges in sensory processing, language and communication, social understanding, and imagination. Sensory processing involves difficulty in people with autism making sense of stimuli like light, sound, and texture. Language and communication challenges include struggles in verbal expression, understanding words and sentences. Social understanding difficulties manifest in challenges with non-verbal cues and turn-taking. Imagination, thinking, and organizing manifests in presence of unusual and unpredictable and repetitive behavior, as well as interests. Overall, these challenges impact the daily life of individuals with autism. Intervention with people with autism is complex and needs to be wholesome, inclusive of physical environment, social environment, and supportive environment. The diagram on the screen depicts an example of interventions required. Suja, slide.
Yes, it's on, Maggie.
Okay, thanks. The most challenging area of meaningful intervention is the difficulty in sensory integration, which people with autism experience day in and day out, terrifying even to imagine. Providing intervention to any form of disability is challenging, and it is more so for people with autism. It is only in the last few decades that there has been academic engagement and research to understand autism and its manifestations. So much so, the knowledge and skill in The inadequate number of professionals that exist today is limited, leave alone with people working in the community. It is estimated that 1 in 160 children has autism spectrum, that is 1% of the world's population. Yet, there are no more than a handful of countries which have explicit policies and programs which include persons with autism. Hence, we are here to call upon governments to include services for persons with autism in their policies and programs. Despite this scenario, a lot can be done to ensure inclusion of persons with autism in family and community life. We have three such examples today from Egypt, India, and Nepal. These initiatives and programs exemplify the incredible resilience, creativity, and determination of individuals, family members, professionals, community workers, and communities as a whole. Together, we shall strive to pave the way for a more inclusive and compassionate world for all. Thank you. Over
Thanks,
to you,
Venki.
Manu.
Yeah, thanks, Venki. Now we'll move on to our first presenter, Dr. Gauri Diwan. The topic is addressing the needs of families of young children with autism in low-resource settings. Dr. Gauri Diwan is a development pediatrician and the director of the Child Development Group at Sangat, an NGO based in India with hubs in Delhi and Bhopal. She has been part of the technical resource groups of the Rashtriya Bal Swasthya Karyakram, Government of India, and on the WHO Technical Consultative Group, providing expertise for autistic people in developing countries, for services for autistic people in developing countries. Dr. Diwan has been a member of the Lancet Commission on the Future of Care and Research in Autism from 2019 to 2021 and is an NSAR Global Senior Leader. She has been teaching in Sangat's Leadership in Mental Health course since 2009 and has taught case studies in global mental health delivery at Harvard Medical School. She was also visiting faculty at the University of Ibadan's Master of Child and Adolescent Mental Health program. Over to you, Dr. Diwan, and you have 15 minutes for your presentation.
Thank you. I'm just confirming that people can see my screen in slideshow mode. Can I be heard?
Yes.
Yes,
Lovely.
we can see.
Wonderful. Okay, so thank you very much to IFRA and IDF for this invitation to speak to this audience. And as described, and thank you also for the kind introduction, I'm going to talk about an approach that we've taken to address the needs of families of young children with autism in low resource settings. So a little bit about us and the organization I work with. I work in an organization called Sangat. It's an Indian not-governmental organization or a not-for-profit, which was established in 1996. And the aim is really at generating public health research, which can help transform mental health across the life course. We focus on psychosocial approaches, and a key aspect of our work is recognizing the lack of specialist providers and providing innovative approaches and solutions to fill this gap. Venki has already spoken about autism spectrum disorder, but I'm just going to go over a few more points. One is that we know it's a neurodevelopmental disorder, but what I want to talk about is a key impairment that, yes, the interaction with environment is very important, but a key impairment is also social communication, which is one of its fundamental difficulties that children with autism have. It is present from birth, but these impairments are often recognized as the child grows and is most often diagnosed by the age of 4 years old. There are gender differences in presentation, and we seem to be recognizing autism much more frequently in boys. And there is now some interesting research about whether girls and females present a little differently, and we're not picking them up adequately. Children with autism, as already described, have varied levels of care and often require substantial lifelong help because of the impact which lasts through their lives. Also, just to say in terms of prevalence, autism impacts 1 in every 100 children. So though it's not a common disorder, it's also not very rare. It is present in our communities, and we're increasingly recognizing it in the field. This slide really talks to the journey that Sagar has taken with respect to the research we've been doing in autism in developing these innovative solutions. As I already described, we started off as a child development clinic in 1996. But in 2009, we decided that instead of focusing on service delivery that many organizations were focused on, we would really start understanding and exploring the experiences of families and doing fundamental research in trying to understand, what do families need? What are the gaps? How can we support these gaps? And so in 2009, we really drilled down through the Aarti project on exploring family experiences. And one of the highlights of our findings was that families really didn't know where to go for interventions, but also they didn't know what intervention to go for. There were very few evidence-based interventions. And so between 2012 and 2016, we set up to adapt an intervention that I'm going to talk a little bit more about, which we call PASS Plus. And we evaluated this through what we call randomized controlled trials in 2 settings in India, once in Goa, in a peri-urban setting, and then in rural Maharashtra. In 2018, we got funded to evaluate it using a frontline worker. So really thinking about, instead of using project-based workers, who is the worker that exists in the health system? And can we train up these workers to deliver this intervention? So in India, we have a frontline worker called the Accredited Social Health Activist, or the ASHA. And we trained 11 of them, and 7 of them delivered this intervention in a randomized controlled trial, which is still underway and will be completed this year. On the back of the research that we have done for 20 years really in the field, we've received a very ambitious project grant, which is called Namaste, where we are going to be working in 3 countries in 4 districts in South Asia to develop and implement a detection care pathway. Can we detect children in the community early using existing workers? And can we deliver these interventions in a rollout through 4 districts, 1 in Nepal, 1 in Sri Lanka, and 2 districts in India. I also, I won't go back to the slide, but I want to mention before I start on this slide that we have a number of international foundations that have been giving us support for the research we do, which includes Autism Speaks from the USA, Grand Challenges Canada, and we get MRC UK as well as NIHR money for the current work that we're doing. So the intervention that we've been focused on is parent-mediated. And I'm going to try and explain what this means. So unlike most therapies where a counselor or a therapist works directly with the child, we actually don't work with the child at all. We work only with the parent. And the intervention, in this intervention, the parent receives the support to adopt strategies which support their child's specific needs. Parent-mediated interventions can be delivered in the child's natural environment. They can be tailored to the individual parent and their child. Because the parent learns these strategies themselves, they learn to generalize them quite quickly. So, for example, parents may be taught in a counseling session how to do the strategies, but then they also do these strategies at feeding time, at bath time, at bedtime. So these skills get generalized very quickly into the life and the environment of the child. The parents can respond to new problems, and there are more opportunities for full family participation. For some reason, okay. So this is the intervention that we've adapted and developed. It's called the Parent Mediated Autism Social Communication Intervention for Non-Specialists Plus, or PASS Plus. It is adapted from the Preschool Autism Communication Therapy, or PACT, which was developed at the University of Manchester in the UK. It's a developmental approach, so it's not behavioral. It thinks about the typical trajectory of social communication development. It recognizes the neurodiverse ways that children with autism communicate, and it tries to put the children back on track by teaching parents how to create the social communication supportive environment. It's modular in its approach. It has been developed for non-specialist delivery. So unlike the PACT, which was delivered in the UK by speech and language therapists, we don't have enough of them. So we've actually delivered it through a non-specialist trained workers. It uses video feedback, and you're going to see this in a little bit. And it's delivered in a naturalistic setting, either at the center or at home. This is a little video of what a typical PASS communication session looks like.
हाँ, तो बताएं कैसे हैं आप?
मैम मैं ठीक हूँ।
तो क्या आप मुझे ये बता सकते हैं जो पिछले 15 दिन में जो हमने तरकीबें की थी उनका अभ्यास कैसे कर पाए जो पिछले सेशन में हमने किया था?
जी, ये 15 दिन अच्छे रहे और मैं ज्यादातर दिनों में प्रैक्टिस कर पाई हूँ।
वाकई में ये जान के मुझे बहुत अच्छा लगा। क्या आप मुझे याद दिला सकते हैं कि हमने कौन से लक्ष्य बनाए थे?
हाँ, यही कि अनायरा को उसकी इंटरेस्ट के हिसाब से खेलने की परमिशन दूँ और मुझे उसके साथ खेल में अपनी खुशी को शेयर करना था।
क्या आप बता सकते हैं कि आपने कैसे किया?
हाँ, मैंने कल उसके सामने कुछ खिलौने रखे जिसमें एक जाइलोफोन और एक ड्रम रखा। उसने ड्रम को चूज किया अपने खेलने के लिए।
ये तो बहुत अच्छी बात है। मैं आज फिर से ड्रम लेके आई हूँ और एक जाइलोफोन है, 2 स्टिक हैं और किचन सेट है। एक स्टिक आपके लिए है, एक अनायरा के लिए। चलिए प्ले रिकॉर्ड करते हैं और इसमें आप पुराने लक्ष्य को ध्यान रखते हुए खेल का आनंद लें। तो आज का खेल कैसा लगा आपको?
मुझे बहुत पसंद आया। मैंने महसूस किया कि अनायरा ने और दिन के अकॉर्डिंग ड्रम को ज्यादा देर तक बजाया है।
जब हमने इसको एक साथ देखा तो क्या खेल की वीडियो में कभी ऐसा लगा कि आप दोनों खेल का आनंद ले रहे हैं?
हाँ, मुझे अच्छा लगा था जब हम ड्रम बजा रहे थे और उसने भी मेरी तरफ देखा और स्माइल दी थी।
हाँ, मैंने भी इसे गौर किया। चलो फिर से देखते हैं। उस क्लिप में जो कुछ हो रहा है उसका ये एक अच्छा विवरण है। आइए चलिए एक दूसरी क्लिप देखते हैं और आप मुझे उसका वर्णन दें कि वहाँ पे क्या हो रहा है। आज हमने देखा अनायरा ने ड्रम उठाया, आपने उसे थोड़ी देर के लिए उसके तरीके से खेलने दिया और फिर उसके साथ खेल में जुड़ गए। उसने भी खेल को खुश होकर खेला और ऊपर देखा, आपको देखकर मुस्कुराई, लेकिन जब आपने खेल की गति बढ़ाई तो वो दूर हो गई। तो जो अगले 15 दिन के लिए हमें लक्ष्य बनाए, आप मुझे बताएंगे?
जी हाँ, हम ऐसा कर सकते हैं कि अनायरा को उसके इंटरेस्ट के अकॉर्डिंग उसे खिलौने चूज करने दे सकते हैं और जैसा वो खेलना चाहती है उसके साथ वैसे ही खेल सकते हैं।
बिल्कुल, बहुत अच्छे से आपने बताया और मैंने वही लिख दिया है। ठीक।
So as you noticed in that video, it's based on video feedback. We get parents to look at themselves playing with their child. And based on manualized strategies, the counselor gives advice to the parent and gets them to recognize what they're doing well and what they could do differently to support their child. I'm going to show you now a video about these frontline workers, because there's a lot of skepticism about whether we can really train up these workers to deliver a complex intervention. And here, let's listen to a few of them speak.
एक आशा कार्यकर्ता होने के बावजूद ऐसे बच्चों को ध्यान नहीं दे पाते थे जो कैंपस में आने के बाद हमारे लिए संभव हो पाया है। हम उनके लिए भी काम कर सकते हैं। अच्छी बात यह है कि ये इंटरवेंशन घर पर दिया जाता है, खेल के द्वारा और मुफ्त में, जो कि परिवारों को अच्छा लगता है।
यहाँ पर मैं ऐसे बच्चों के साथ काम कर रही थी जिनको ऑटिज्म था। तो ऑटिज्म के बारे में इससे पहले मुझे कुछ पता नहीं था, और स्टार्टिंग में जब हमारी ट्रेनिंग हुई तो हमें पता चला कि किस तरह से हमें जाके सेशन डिलीवर करने हैं। और जैसे कि एक उपचार होता है, उसमें मेडिसिन देते हैं, तो वो मेडिसिन दी जाती है पेशेंट्स को। तो पेशेंट जब दवाइयाँ खाता है तो हम उसका देखते हैं कि इसको असर कर रही है या नहीं कर रही है। बट इस उपचार में बिल्कुल अलग था। हमें ये उपचार देना था उनके पेरेंट्स को, मतलब जो उनके केयर टेकर थे, और हमें डायरेक्ट बच्चे के साथ इसमें बात नहीं करनी थी, ना उनको हमें कोई जाके सीधा कुछ बोलना था। हमें बस पेरेंट्स से बात करनी थी। और इस अगर हम देखें, इस जो ये ऑटिज्म का जो उपचार था, इसका मेन मोटिव था बच्चे और माँ के बीच में जो बॉन्ड है वो स्ट्रॉन्ग करने का।
शुरू में हमें भी लगा था कि पता नहीं ये इससे क्या होगा, कुछ इस उपचार को देने से आगे कुछ मतलब लोगों को कुछ बेहतरी अपने बच्चों में दिखाई देगी, नहीं दिखाई देगी। बट ये बिल्कुल अमेजिंग था। मतलब इतना सुधार देखा। जिन बच्चों को मतलब जो वर्बल भी नहीं थे, उन्होंने भी कुछ स्टेज पे आके कुछ आवाजें निकाली, कुछ हल्के शब्द बोलने शुरू किए, कुछ एक्टिविटी शुरू की। और जो मेन हमारा ये था कि कम्युनिकेशन जो एक था कि बच्चा सोशल कम्युनिकेशन से जुड़ पाए, वो जो चीज थी वो सच में इसमें दिखाई देती है कि बच्चा किस तरीके से कनेक्ट कर पाता है चीजों को।
So basically, what we are trying to do is really improve shared attention in the context of the parent and the child. So our work is really with the adult. And what we do is we encourage the parents to adopt very simple strategies, to observe their child carefully, to identify their child's signals. So what are these signals? Because these often communication signals in autism are quite weak. We get parents to become better observers of their child's signals, to follow their child's lead in play, particularly, and then later on generalize to the real world and daily routines, and then to engage in their child's activity. So to validate to the child that what you're doing is interesting. I, as a parent, am interested in what you're interested in. Let's play together. So here is, just simple examples of the way we work. These are some of the strategies we work with.
Dr. Gauri, you have a couple of minutes.
Yeah, I'm on my last slides. Yeah. So really, this is the way we work, which is, if a child is playing with a car, we get the parent to play with the car in the way the child is playing with the car. So observe and copy, and then copy and expand. So play with the car and maybe then say car. So the child starts associating these words. And in a similar way, we get the parents to encourage them to use everyday opportunities to do very much the same. So if a child wants water, the parent notices this, because often the child's signals are quite weak. The parent will pick up a glass and say water and give the water to the child. So we're trying to help the child and validate the child's ability to socially communicate with their caregivers. So really, this is my last slide. Helping parents succeed is really our aim, to understand parents' views and expectations, to explain to parents how intervention supports social communication difficulties and autism, to adapt the intervention to fit the family, to focus on the key challenges that families feel are important. So this is really our aim, is to put the family and the parent first. In sessions, we start small. We help parents focus on stepped goals. We help parents problem solve when progress is slow. And we help parents identify times when they can practice new skills. So that's really my presentation. It's still, watch this space, because our main randomized control trial, the results will be really available only at the end of this year. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Gauri. That was, thank you for the presentation. Now, our next speaker is Ms. Maha Haleli. On the topic, she'll speak on the topic from center to community in intervention with people with autism. Dr. Helali earned her Master of Special and Inclusive Education from the Institute of Education of University of London. In 1998, she and other parents established the Egyptian Advanced Society for Persons with Autism and Related Disorders, where she served as chairperson. In 2004, Dr. Helali was chosen as the coordinator of the Education Center for Special Needs, Education for All program of UNESCO. Since 2008, she has been a member of the Partners in Inclusion Network concerned with the education of children with learning disabilities in the Arab region. She also co-established the Arab Network for Autism and has served on its board since 2009. From 2011 to 2018, Dr. Helali served as the president of Inclusion International MENA region, and in 2015, she became a board member of the Egyptian National Council for Persons with Disabilities, representing parents of people with intellectual disabilities. She earned the British Council Social Impact Award given to UK graduates with distinguished careers. And in 2020, Egypt's First Lady also awarded Dr. Helali's effort to advocate and serve persons with disabilities in Egypt. Since 2021, she has been the technical advisor to the Minister of Social Solidarity for Disability and Rehabilitation Affairs. Over to you, Dr. Helali, and you have 15 minutes. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I made a common mistake of thinking I'll be on 7 Cairo time. So I've been running against the traffic to come. Thank you for the introduction. I founded the Advanced Society in 1998, and it was registered in 1999, and it's a parents' organization. 7 of the founders, 5 of us had children with autism, and this was why we focused mainly on autism. We were able to, in 99, find a curriculum which we found to be suiting to what we were looking for. As parents with children with autism, we believe very much in the ABA, which is Applied Behavior Analysis. And we were looking for a curriculum that used ABA, but that was also using positive reinforcers with the children. And this is when we came across the ABLS, Assessment of Basic Language and Learning Skills. And I'm not going exactly as with what's written in the presentation. And anyway, the presentation will be sent to all of you. So the ABLS, what we liked about it, it was user-friendly. It was good for parents to use. It was good for specialists to use. And with the scarcity of specialists who understand and work with autism, it was like an answer to what we needed. It focused mainly on the age 3 to 8. So later on, we not only Arabized it, we localized it, and we changed the language part and we changed the academics part to suit the Arabic language. We also had to build for the age under 3, because we were getting, of course, children diagnosed younger and younger, and this was coming on with people learning more and more about autism. So our vision has always been that we live in a community that will accept and understand persons with autism and other intellectual disabilities especially. And our mission is then to not only advocate for the rights, but also to provide the services that will help them reach their utmost potential. We provide services mainly for persons with autism, persons with other developmental disorders, intellectual disabilities, language delay, mild cerebral palsy, behavior disorders, and learning disabilities. We very much work with a multidisciplinary approach. So all the specialists work together, the speech and language, the OT, and this is what happens inside Advance itself. And Advance is now having 125 students from age 3 to 38, almost, 38. So we have 14 classes. In every class, we have 9 to 12 students. Very early, when we started the family support, we were realizing, of course, that the parents need to understand more and more about the children, need to understand about how to work with them at home. As my colleague mentioned before in her presentation, the parents need to understand how to work with the problems that the persons with autism has. There are two main factors in autism. One is the delay in language and social skills. And the second one is the rituals. And part of the rituals are the sensory disorders that we face with autism. So parents have to understand this, because not more of the same is going to do it. No, you have to understand, you have to change everything around the child to meet the needs of the child. We started campaigns, and besides, we also have the Empowering Adults program. The Empowering Adults are for those who are older, from age 18 to 21. We work on finding them what kind of job will be best for them, but not all of them are accepted in jobs. We're still having this problem in Egypt in general for work for persons with disabilities, with all kinds of disabilities. The two disabilities that are easier to find works for are visually impaired or those with physical impairments, because usually they would have gone through education. Education in Egypt is free till university, so they can go into the university. So then they have a certificate, and it is, I'm not saying all of them find work, but it is easier for them to find work. The most difficult to find work for are the intellectually disabled, autism, and of course those with emotional disorders. I'm not going to talk about the programs we have, because this is not the main topic you are focusing on. We have other programs outside, for like the summer program, Life Skills, which is every Saturday. The respite care camps are really important for the parents, because then they get to have a break. And of course, we realize that with autism, there are always sleep disorders, and parents suffer a lot. I'm telling you as a parent, I'm a parent myself. So up till now, my son is 33, and we have a lot of autism nights when we don't sleep. So we started a campaign for autism awareness. And with this campaign, we started it in 2005, and we started to go from governorate to governorate. And the idea was to not only create awareness, but also we were trying to stop the move that the parents were moving from outside Cairo to try and find the services. So we realized that what would be easier was to create the services for them in where they are. So we would recognize and find one of the active NGOs that work with intellectual disabilities or developmental delays. Very rarely did we find anyone who worked with autism in the governorates. But then we would work with them, and we would give them the program that we worked on. Our program by then had grown. We had built it up to the vocational, not only age 3 to 8, but we've built it up until we reached the vocational and also employment. So with the campaign, that's going from governor to governor. I think we have only like 8 more governors to cover from the 27 governors of Egypt. So we have covered 19 governors. So we also reach services and training in the 26 governors. We only have 1 governor that we have not been able to work with, but what we do is we usually do activities for the Autism Awareness Month. The activities is to show the children at their abilities, not what they can't do. So we do sports, a sports gala, we do an art exhibition, we have a scientific conference, and the scientific conference always we talk about what's the latest in the field of autism, what the latest in the intervention, what is the latest in the diagnosis. And we have a parent seminar. We ask the parents what would they like us to talk about. We also do an annual inclusive conference, and the idea is that with inclusive education, our children also with autism will have a chance to be included with the other children. There was a law that was issued in 2018 in Egypt, law number 10, which is for the rights of persons with disabilities. And this law we're very proud of because it actually is very parallel to the CRPD, to the convention. And it does mention the right for education. And since then, there's been inclusion, but only for mild disabilities. And we're hoping that with the move and with people understanding more and the curriculum now being inclusive and with more teachers training, that we will be able to include more and more children with disabilities in the schools. These maps show the map of Egypt, and there are 3 main maps that we are proud of in advance. One of them shows our free campaign, the campaigns which we do for free. Then we go in all the governorates in which we provide diagnosis and setting a program for the children. And as I said, we would have already allocated our partner in those NGO, in those governorates, so that they would continue the work that we are doing. Whenever we have anything new, we do a new curriculum, we do a new application, we bring them in to be trained so that they are always up to date with what is going on in advance. The last one on the left is about an alternative communication system called Kalami, which we have worked and produced with money from Vodafone. And it works very much with like the picture exchange communication system, which is you exchange pictures instead of words for those who are nonverbal. And there are like at least 40 to 60% of persons with autism who are nonverbal. So this is an alternative method. There are many communication applications in English, but this was the first one in Arabic and the first one in Egypt anyway. Okay. These photos will show you when we go down to the governors, and what we do, we usually ask that the partner NGO takes in all the applications for people who want their children to be assessed. And then we set a time and a date, and our staff go there, and the staff then get to do 3 things. Mainly, they give, as you can see down in the picture with the lady standing talking, this is one of our specialists. She's the head of the speech and language department, and they give lectures to the parents, and mainly on how to communicate with the children and how to do verbal behavior and try and motivate the children to talk. Of course, you can't do everything in one time, but then we have the partner NGOs who will then continue with what we would have left for them. And the other thing we do when we go is that we start seeing the children one by one, and every child has an assessment. There are 3 specialists who see him at least, and then there's a program which is set. And then the program, we follow up with the NGO, and we ask for the reports on the case, on what's happening, so we can tell how is it going, and if there are any problems, the NGO can get in touch with our specialists and talk to them and find out what to do. Okay, so but we said training, and then we specifically work with the children. Parents' awareness is very important because, as we all know, the parents continue good willingly in the children's life more than anybody. And without training the children, the parents, the children will not benefit. The parents will not be able to work with them. And even if they don't work with them, they will not know what kind of services the children need, and if those who are giving the service are qualified to do this or not. It really, the need is very high. And this shows photos from some of the governors that we have gone to and the villages. It can tell you how much that even the WHO estimate of 1 out of 160, I don't think is realistic. I think if we go with what the last figure in the UK was 1 out of 55. We can take something in the middle. It is not going to be less than 100. There was one study done lately in Egypt in 2020 in the National Research Council, and they estimated that it's 1 out of 100. So even if we go with this, Egypt is a highly populated country with 104 million, so the need is very high. These are like examples of the case studies. This is one of the kids that we saw, young one, Anas, he's 3 and 6 months. So he wouldn't communicate, he moves a lot. We had to use with him reinforcement. We explained to the parents how to use reinforcement and the pairing, of course, before any work. And it's all done through play therapy. The result was, after the work, is that there was a development in the auditory attention. He could understand more like a near voice, a far voice. The visual attention was better. That was the young child. Habiba was 8 years old, and her problem was more in the academics part. By then, the parents are really focusing on the academics. Even if the child is not ready, they only can, because they want to put them in the school, and children with autism can go to school with a support teacher in Egypt. So they push, sometimes they push when the kid is not ready. But anyway, Habiba was reading with the Gestalt method. So she was reading, not decoding the sounds, but actually reading sight words. And the writing and the social interaction. So this was the focus. The result was the child developed the ability to write her name. She was able to read more than 50 words, 3 to 4 letter words. And she was able to match them with their pictures, which means that she's understanding them, not just identifying. She could recite the names of the months, the year, the days of the week. She could tell time. And this means that she was, progressing.
Dr. Halali, you have 1 minute.
Okay, so in short, this is what we have been doing till now. And this is how we've tried to reach what we're doing at the center, that it reaches the village. And we will be looking into working more with the CBR method, which we have not really worked with before. We took training last August with Dr. Ala in Jordan, Dr. Ala Sabia. And the idea was to understand more the CBR and to understand how we can help more. The numbers of persons with autism is increasing. The need is high. The specialists are rare. So we need to work more with something that is more feasible, that can be done. Thank you very much. And it was my pleasure being part of this webinar.
Thank you very much, Dr. Halali. So, after listening to the presentation on From Institution to Community, The next presentation is on intervention with people with autism in the community, by Mr. Thakur Prasad Champare. Mr. Prasad has been the Executive Director of Child Welfare Scheme Nepal since October 2019. Previously, he served as Human Rights Officer of the National Human Rights Commission of Nepal and was the country focal person with the Civil Society Alliance of Child Rights in South Asia project for a project funded by the European Union. From January 2014 to December 2018, he worked at the United Nations mission in South Sudan as a human rights officer. During these assignments, his work focused mainly on the rights of child, persons with disabilities, women, girls, and youth. Mr. Prasad, you have 15 minutes. Please take.
Thank you, Susan. Kindly allow me to share my screen. First of all, I would like to thank IFRA and IDEA for this wonderful opportunity to share our organization and our intervention in the field of community level and on autism. Susan, can you?
Yes. Would you like me to share, Mr.
Yeah.
Thakur? Yeah, please go ahead. Let me know when you want me to change.
Okay, this one is previous slide. Let me go through it. And first of all, I'd like to inform about our organizations. Child Welfare Scheme Nepal, in short, we can say CWSN is a national NGO established in 1997 and focused in 11 districts of Gandaki province. Our motto to working to create lasting change of person with disabilities, children, youth, adolescents, women, and girls by providing rehabilitation services, protection shelter, vocational training, life skill education, advocacy, rights promotion, and fulfilled in line with the national and international provisions. These are the existing program of our organizations. Temporary Protection Center program started in 2004 and to provide basic need for children at risk. And as of today, 3,021 children at risk have been benefited. And life skill education, basically this one is focused for the adolescents, especially students age from 10 to 14, and started in 2017, and annually 2,021 students have been benefiting this program. Community-based child protection program. This started in 2019, aimed to strengthen community-based child protection systems, and ASA health program started in 2000 and have been supporting 7,000 plus clients annually. Our intervention on disability. CWSN became a member of CBR network in 2005 and the member of Rehabilitation International Global in 2018. It has been implementing rehabilitation and inclusive education program, reaching up to 1,124 persons with disabilities, including 456 children with disabilities since 2019. We have been providing rehabilitation practice and techniques for caretakers for persons with disabilities, income generation support, stationery, schooling, preschooling materials, support for students and children with disabilities. We formed 15 mutual support groups of persons with disabilities and carried to enhance capacity on the field of disabilities. In 2022, we conducted district-wide survey to identify the status of persons with disability in Tanu, the most populated districts in Kandaki province, Nepal, from July to October. And we gathered information about of 6,200 persons and noted that 49% of people have some kind of disabilities and they are still yet to be received their disability identity card. These are some pictures and these girls. Recently, she received her disability identity card. We implemented a project entitled on enhancing the right of persons with disabilities in Tanu districts. From June to November last year, we reached up to 233 persons with disabilities who were able to receive their disability ID cards. We reached 1,035 people through our right-based programs, including 165 government officials, 442 members of CSOs and community health workers, and members of DPOs in 23 wards of 3 municipalities in Tanu districts. These are some pictures. Our staffs oriented the DPOs and government stakeholders in Tanu districts. Basically, we focus on right of the person with disabilities in line with the CRPD and act relating to the person with disability in Nepal and the procedure of getting the disability identity card. At the same time, we also focused on the social protection schemes committed by the Nepal governments. From 2020 to 2022, we have implemented capacity building on rehabilitation practice with children with disabilities in Pokhara, with the financial and technical support by the Hong Kong Society for Rehabilitation. The main aim of this program was to increase the capacity of CWSN staffs on rehabilitation practice, improve activity level of parents, caretakers of children with disabilities, and create inclusive community in Pokhara, Nepal. These are some pictures. In the middle one, the occupational therapist, she came from Hong Kong and she on site and online, she has been teaching us, our staffs and our member of children with disabilities, parents of children with disabilities since 2020. Our major intervention of children with autism, basically we focus on slum areas in Pokhara municipalities and some rural areas in Tanu districts. We conducted home-based survey in 12 slum areas of Pokhara and rural areas of Tanu districts, identified children with disabilities, including autism. The staff were trained by SKSR on rehabilitation practice with children with disabilities. We started home-based intervention for each child, train community-based female health workers, parents, caretakers to engage with children with disabilities. During our intervention, we selected children with disabilities from the poor economic backgrounds living in urban slum areas of Pokhara and 3 rural municipalities of Tanu districts. Currently, we have been serving 35 children with disabilities, especially children with autism, ID, and CP. The motto of home-based rehabilitation service to reduce financial burden, save caretakers' time used in travel from home to service center, to improve the child's participation and inform their family members, to help to identify necessary assistive devices to be used, create a disabled-friendly environment among the community, to introduce 10 community health worker with these families. Last 3 years, we saw 23 neurodevelopmental disabilities, including autism, cerebral palsy, and intellectual disability through home-based rehabilitation service from 2020 to 2022. Implemented capacity building on rehab practice with children with disabilities, phase 2 from June 2023 to May 2025 with 15 children with autism, intellectual disability, and cerebral palsy. We distributed toys and assistive materials for 20 children with autism living in Pokhara to enhance their cognition, sensory, and communication skills. Basically, during the home-based service, we provide physiotherapies, occupational therapy, sensory therapy, ADL activities, preschooling, assistive device and materials, and medicine supports. In the first picture, you can see the communication therapy expert. She came from Hong Kong and she's conducting home-based activities. And the second one and third one, these are some pictures of our home-based service. And we also conduct phone and video calls for follow-up, home visits and counseling, hospital visits and supports, formation of parent mutual groups for supports, food material support for the families of persons with disabilities, use of low resource materials, and we also conducted a health insurance for 361 family persons with disabilities in Pokhara Metropolitan City during the COVID-19 in 2022 and 2021. This is the case study 1. Kasik, the boy, first time when we met him, he was very weak, feeding skills, refused to brush and properly place defecation, and we started intervention regularly when he was 11 years old, living with families, parents and younger brother, especially their family migrant worker in Qatar, came back to spend time with their son. We provided medical support for 3 years. After 1 year, he was able to eat, brush teeth, and use of toilet independently. And she provided so many assistive devices. We can watch the video.
So I won't be able to play the video in PDF format. Do you have the video separately?
Sorry, I don't have yet.
Okay.
And we can go to the second case study, second case, and the boy.
You have 1 minute. You have 1 minute.
Okay, this is another intervention we conducted in during our project areas. After 1 year, he was able to go to school. This is the stage of fitting video. His sleeping order also has improved at the moment. Next one, please. This is the same case as I mentioned earlier. Samir, we conducted a home-based intervention and we provided relief food package, medicine, and other assistive devices for Samir. We focus intervention on brushing, proper feeding, and toileting, getting development supports. Still, he needs support from CWSL. Next one. Challenges with parents who were frustrated, traumatized, depressed, and lack of motivation and trust in rehabilitations. Reluctant to talk and uncomfortable in finding out how to care for disabled child. these are some challenges. So I already informed I was informed that I don't have enough time. So please, next slide. We lesson learned rehabilitation or intervention is a long-term process. Caretakers must be trained, calm, and spend more time with their children. Community-based rehabilitation must be expanded to reduce hospital medications. Wider cooperation required to deal with disability issues. Bringing together groups with mutual concern is empowering to help with planning or discussing the issues related to the disability. Continue building these mutual groups for conversation and interaction and awareness activities. Next one, please. After these last 3 to 5 years, some outcomes are here. Caretakers are trained, motivated, and spend more time, and their child's activity level have been improved. Short and long-term goals were set, starting with the very basic level intervention, which helped to improve the situations. Parents became familiar with each other and shared their challenges and activities, which helped to motivate others. Mutual groups were formed and their activity enhanced, so they could lobby for necessary arrangement for their children. Concerned stakeholders became aware and expand their commitment to address the issue related to disability in the community. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Now we are opening for question answers. So if any of the participants have any question or clarifications with any of our speakers, please raise your hand. We'll call your name. You can use the raise hands option on your screen. Muskan?
Muskan, she's a deaf person. If you can spotlight her, I could see her signs.
I don't know how to spot.
So we are just asking Muskan to adjust her phone in a landscape mode. Sorry, we are not able, her video is her screen is keep switching. She's asking for 2 minutes. Yeah, it's better now. So Muskan is a deaf woman. She is asking, related to the autism, we do have deaf people as well who are autistic as well. So sometimes we try to make them understand, but people try to make the courses available for them. They might be in more artistic way. So could you share the other approaches if they want to learn any particular things, if not just the teaching way, what the other ways we can use to teach them particular things?
Are you asking to any particular panelist? I mean, to any particular person on the panel? Or can any of them respond?
Anyone can answer the question.
So, from the panelists, any one of you would like to respond to that?
Yes, I would like to.
Yes, Dr. Halali.
Yeah, well, mainly with autism, with 40 to 60% being nonverbal. So we look for an alternative communication system. They don't learn sign language as well as people with hearing impairment. And, you know, like spelling and using, but they use something called the Makaton signs. Okay, Makaton signs are like, I want to eat, I want to drink, want to sleep, let's go for a walk, we're in the car. There are signs which are more descriptive than they are a language. So sign language is a language. But the need is there for communication. They could be missing on some of the input that what's going on, because with the hearing, they have, most of them, hyper hearing. So what they do is that they close the hearing. A lot of time parents, they don't close it, they don't have to close it with their hands, but their brain tells their ears, I do not want to be hearing now because it's causing me pain. So a lot of parents tell us, I call him and he doesn't answer. Although he would hear like the sound of a bag of food that he likes, like Chipsy, for example. He will hear it and he'll be there in a minute to get it. So this is because the sound of Chipsy is a friendly sound to him, which he is okay to hear. But there might be other sounds around that. So working with people with autism, we have to work on the communication. I don't know if I answered your question, Muskan, because I got a bit lost when the signs were not clear and your interpreter, Manisha, was not able to tell us. Did I answer you? Please let me know if I didn't.
Yeah, I do understand. I understand that the communication is a need, but it's better, you know, if they know the sign language, that is more helpful for them. But I just want to know what would be the methodology to teach them anything.
Like everybody, they
Just a
learn
second. I
from...
think she hasn't completed her question.
Yes, okay. I'm sorry.
So, for example, if you want to share the moral stories with them, right? So, how we can have them in an inclusive manner, right? So, what would be the right approach to tell them? I want them to grow. I want to be connected with them. But is it easier to, I mean, share the moral stories with them, or is there should be any particular approaches to deal with them?
Okay, with autism, the social side of communication is not there. So there's something called the theory of mind, where they cannot put themselves in your place. So if you tell them a story and they can't put themselves in the place of whom you're talking about and understand, like, mommy hit her arm, so mommy's in pain. No, they can't understand. Sometimes if I hit my arm, my son will laugh. To him, this is something out of the ordinary and it's funny. But we work on this. We work on feelings. We work on them understanding the others and work on them naming feelings. So that in time, when they've learned that, you can then go into the part of stories. In the beginning, we use stories called social stories, which are just about teaching them about the rituals that happen every day. Like, if we say, Ali will get ready for school. So Ali gets up, we'll put a picture of Ali, and Ali gets up, getting out of bed. And then we say, Ali will brush his teeth, then we'll put a picture of Ali brushing his teeth. So we use picture and the sentence. Not all of them will be reading, but that's the kind of stories we create, called social stories, which we use with them, so that it's something that they experience and they can understand. It is, you know, you relate it to what goes around in their environment. In time,
thank you.
You can then upgrade. Okay.
Yeah, I think this requires a long conversation. if Muskan is okay, she can also talk to Dr. Halali in through email.
Yes, I can
to
send
get a
her
lot more
something
clarity.
to read.
Yeah, thanks. We have a few more hands up. I request
sure.
Sheila George to ask your question. Sheila George.
Yeah. My question is actually for Dr. Divan. I appreciate that you have been training ASHA workers. I think that includes Delhi as well. My question is, ASHA workers are given incentives to do their jobs. Right now, they get incentives for TB. That's how they work. I understand there's no incentive for identifying disabilities in the community. So after having trained them, so how is this going to work out that ASHA workers do identify as well as work with persons with disability in the community?
So thanks. That's a great question. Thanks, Sheila. So I think, the important difference between, I think, the two other presenters and myself is that we are a public health research organization. So we're trying to generate evidence at this point. So in the projects and the programs, we are working with two kinds of workers, ASHAs and Anganwadi. So in the new project, we will be working with Anganwadi workers also who are salaried. And of course, like all frontline workers, at least in the context of India, every new program ends up on their heads. So, but what we are trying to show through the process of our research is that it is possible and it can be done effectively and efficiently. And I think then the aim is to go to policy and generate an incentive for detection and incentive for intervention for ASHA workers, and to recognize, say, an Anganwadi worker to be a specialist worker. So the idea is really to show models that are possible and then leverage policy to actually start working towards, a larger scale up. So we are really not scaling up services, but we're trying to generate the evidence, if that makes sense.
Okay, thank you.
Sue Enfield, you can go next. Your question.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. Thank you very much. I wanted to ask, I'm not quite sure who might like to answer this question, possibly the lady from Sangat, but I work a lot in Rwanda and there is a good understanding of the social model of disability, but there's also a certain faction that is quite medically oriented. And in listening to you all speaking about diagnosis, I'm struck by the fact that the work that you're doing deals with the consequences of the condition. And I wanted to ask in general whether you feel, especially when you're working through non-specialist workers and through parents, it's satisfactory to just address the consequences, and it's not so important to have a specific labeling of the condition, because if the outcomes and consequences for the family are the same, does that really matter? Or is that too much of a sort of generalist's view of my own from my experience? Thank you.
So I'm just happy to attempt to answer that quite complex question, and then maybe hand it over to my co-panelists. I think you're right. I think there is, social determinants of diseases are very important. I think the other thing that we're trying to do in the new program that we are trying to address is what we call a trans-diagnostic approach. So is it possible when you detect, because one of the big roadblocks in for many families is actually getting a diagnosis. And I would say this is across low resource settings. We see this actually all over the world. And I'm not sure I got your accent right, but I know that even in countries like UK, in the US, there are long waiting lists to get a diagnosis. So in the current work that we want to do, which is the detection care pathway, what we're trying to develop is a a journey map for families where the moment there is faltering development, a frontline worker is trained to recognize the change or the faltering development and put the parent on the right track. So, of course, as we know, hearing impairment, visual impairment, they need biomedical approaches. It's very hard to do things psychosocially for sensory and motor problems. But with autism, with things like ADHD, with things like intellectual disability, where you may not have medical comorbidities, it's very possible that you could give them broad-based interventions. And so one of the broad-based interventions is called the WHO, the World Health Organization has developed something called the caregiver skills training, which is really focused on getting, it's kind of a psychoeducation package and giving parents a broad set of skills to understand their child. So that is kind of a very good starting block. And if the child then has social communication problems, so we're not even going to call it autism in the new program, we're going to say that your child has social communication problems, why don't we give you something called PASS Plus? So I think increasingly we will need to, particularly in a CBR or a community-based approach, really have the diagnosis as something which potentially could happen on the side. I also want to just add a small caveat, which is I think diagnoses are very important for receiving services in many contexts. So in the UK, in the US, you will not be triaged into services unless you have a diagnosis. In many low-resource settings like India, there are very few services, so often the diagnosis is not so important, but there are disability cards, there are disability, there is a disability certification, all of which become important to get certain kinds of benefits. So I think it's a fine line between the two. And so I'm not quite sure whether I've answered the question, but certainly I would say early interventions should start off anyway, whether you have a diagnosis or not. But I'm happy for my panelists to come in.
Anybody else would like to respond to that? Okay. Now, Rajul, you can ask your question. Rajul?
Meenakshi, can I say something here? Venki here.
Yes, Venki.
Although I'm not a panelist, it makes common sense for me. Is that one thing is, the first thing is we should not get fixed on models, the social model, medical model, whatever model. The thing is whether the need of the child is it being addressed in a holistic way. Therefore, I think that if you have that setup, that frame of mind, then with the way you approach the situation will be completely different than from when we get into fixed models of intervention. I'm not saying one social model is to be done away with. I'm not saying that at all. But we need to recognize the situation of the need of the child or the individual and address and
yeah, Venki, I think that was precisely the question.
Just a minute. The medical model has its place. So to say that only social models should exist, not the medical model, would be doing a grave injustice to people with disabilities, me being one. Thank you.
Rajul, you can ask your question. I can see Rajul's hand rise. Are you going to ask your question?
I can't. Correct. Can you hear me now?
Yes, yes. Yes, yes.
Mine was a very simple question, and I think the person from Egypt did answer it in part. Is AAC used at all in any of the intervention system? Because it wasn't mentioned at all. And in the PASS project, in the PASS Pack project, does AAC figure at all? AAC meaning alternative communication methods?
No, we are not using alternative communication methods at all, partly because these children, first of all, are quite young. They are 2 to 7 or 2 to 9. And we haven't really, thought about that at this point. I'm sure there is a place for that as children grow, but not at this point. We're really aiming at this point to develop social communication in these young kids. So the answer is no.
Yeah, Gauri, I think
and again,
the
you know,
question
Raju,
was also to
sorry, I just want to
Dr.
answer
Halali.
one thing is I really do want to clarify that I represent something which is very different from the other two people who are delivering services. What we are trying to do is generate models and evidence for evidence-based interventions. So in the real world, you might put together a number of things, and hopefully all those things have good evidence supporting them. What we're trying to do at the moment is generate evidence for a social communication intervention.
Thanks,
Can I
Gauri. I think
add
Raju
something?
also wanted intervention from Dr. Halali, Dr. Maha Halali.
Yeah, I
Can you
just
go
want to add that
respond
yes,
to her?
Rajul, we use the alternative communication system because what can we do when 40 to 60% are nonverbal? And if we just keep pushing and pushing and pushing that the child talks and he doesn't talk, the parents get very depressed and frustrated. And we want them to go on and we want the child to communicate and tell us what he's feeling, what he wants, so that the behaviors are more controlled. Because a lot of the behaviors are there to tell us that they're not happy with what's going on, or they're not able to get what they want, or they're not able to express. So you need to give them a method to express. So whenever we use language, whenever we use alternative communication system, we have to use language with it. So this is the main thing. If you're going to use a photo for communicating, the picture exchange, you have to use language with it. Sometimes we find the kids starting to talk, This will go on besides also the speech and language therapist working on all the oromotor skills. We do not give up that the child can talk. I had a child who started talking at 11, and they usually taught us that after 5, if the child never talked, he will not talk. No, we had a girl talked at 8. We had a boy who talked at 11. So we never stop. We do the alternative communication because he needs to communicate what he's feeling, what he wants. This helps us, of course, to start teaching academics. And then it also helps with the everyday life. Even with the sports, we are using photos with the sports so that it's a visual aid for them. And even with those who are using language, they like the social stories. Those who are reading and writing, they like the social stories. It's something that makes sense to them.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot. We have 2 more minutes. Now we are almost closing the webinar. Now I request Snigdha to give the vote of thanks.
Thank you, Meenakshi. On behalf of the Indian Disability Forum, IDF, and Indian Forum for Rehabilitation and Assistive Technology, IFRA, I thank our 3 presenters today, Dr. Gauri Diwan, Dr. Maha Hilali, and Mr. Thakur Prasad Chapagan for their eye-opening and beautiful presentations. We thank the UN aid agencies, governments, civil society organizations of persons with disabilities, parents group representatives, and academicians for being with us today. We also thank the translators, Ms. Nidhi Agarwal, Ms. Yanike Hansen, Ms. Firoza Hosania. We thank the sign language interpreters, Ms. Manisha Sharma, Mr. Atul Kumar, Mr. Manan Sharma, and Mr. Deepak Shastri. We also acknowledge and thank the participants for their valuable contributions. Our thanks go to Ms. Ramachari, Disability Rights India Foundation, Mr. Arman Ali, National Center for the Promotion of Employment of Disabled People, Ms. Tulika Das, Gautam Chaudhary Memorial Fund, and Ms. Radhika Alkaji for meeting the cost of sign language interpretation, Hindi translation, and documentation. Thank you, Mr. John D'Souza of Center for Education and Documentation, and Ms. Poonam Natarajan of Vidya Sagar for the digital documentation and technical support for the webinar, respectively. Now, at the end, may we observe a minute's silence in solidarity with those people with autism who need support.
Respectivamente. Observemos un momento de silencio en solidaridad con las personas con autismo que necesitan apoyo. Esperamos verles en nuestro 8º webinario. Gracias.
We hope to see you all at our 8th webinar. Thank you very much. We close the program today. Thank you.
And greetings of the day and all the best for the year.
Thank you.